What was the highest ABV beer in the 80s? You'll find out.
Classic one that's always quoted as at that time being the strongest beer in the world was a beer called Samichlaus from at the time a brewery in Switzerland, and then it closed, and then brand got bought, and it's made by a place in Austria these days.
Okay.
But that beer was made one day a year for the St. Nicholas Day, so it's like early December. And it was made and then aged for a year and released 1 year later.
Okay.
And it typically came in at 14 or 14.5% by volume. And it was a very strong Doppelbock.
What does sake yeast have to do with brewing high ABV beers?
Oftentimes sake is in the upper teens in alcohol, and it's not because it's distilled, it's because it's fermented to that level.
Right.
So it's like, well, wait, how does sake yeast make that happen? And sake is technically beer because it's fermented grain.
Right.
So it's like, that's technically a beer yeast that's doing that. What's going on there?
Do you know who poured the highest ABV beer at GABF back in 1996? Wayne does, because he was there.
First time I had Sam Adams Triple Bock out of a barrel, which was the 94 batch at the 96 Craft Brewers Conference in Boston. And they served it out of a little, like, 5-liter or 5-gallon oak barrel.
Sure.
Who was the first to use Cascade hops back in the 1970s? Check this story out. It's awesome.
It was an experimental hop in 1972. It was originally bred in 1956. And imagine, if you will, the beer industry in North America in the early 70s and a hop that smelled and tasted like Cascade. Well, turns out there wasn't really much market for a hop that smelled and tasted like that. But this guy, his name's John, and his dad's name was John Siegel Hop Ranch in Yakima, Washington. John Siegel's dad kept growing this hop because he believed in the hop, and he would grow it, and then no one would buy it. For years, he kept doing this, just taking a total loss on it, until he connected with this guy named Fritz Maytag, owner of Anchor Steam, this tiny little place. This tiny little place that might have been kind of influential.
Yeah.
And Fritz wanted to do this one-off beer, right? They used to do the holiday beer every year. And he wanted to do this one-off beer and do this really hoppy IPA beer, but he wanted a unique hop variety for it. Wow. And he was talking with John Siegel and said, I think I might have just what you want. And that experimental number 56013 became the only hop in this experimental IPA that Anchor brewed in 1975. The beer went over so well that it became a year-round brand for Anchor, now known as Liberty Ale.
Right.
Well, that is an all Cascade beer, and it was essentially the first beer ever made with Cascade. And it's really the only reason Cascade did not go away and die off. And imagine where would hoppy craft beer be without Cascade, right? Sierra Nevada Pale Ale,
Yeah.
Cascades, right? I mean, where would American craft beer be without that hop variety?